so much for joining us for another interview of Magnify Our Impact. And today I'm with a wonderful lady who has so many strings to her bow, but there's three big elements that I'd like to introduce to you first of all today, which is a really powerful, profound mix for me, in that Carole, who we're speaking to today, has a really successful entrepreneurial background and had many successful business ventures in her own right, and has taken that, what's really powerful for me, because all of us in the international development space, in the charity space, looking at social enterprises, looking at community interest companies, traditionally we've come from talking to Carole, a donor-led environment, but now we realize that all organizations also need to be business focused. And so for me, one of the real strengths that Carole carries into the NGO space to help us today is the fact that she's a very successful entrepreneur in her own right, and taken those skills and that wealth into her understanding of the philanthropic world and the NGO world. And she's now also CEO of a wonderful charity that operates within South Africa. So she's the UK CEO of Africa to Kun. So with that introduction, I'd love to say hello officially and good morning to Carole.
Morning, Craig.
Morning, Carole. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. Just give us a potted history, just for a couple of minutes, of, what got you to the space that you enjoy today. Tell us about your background and where you are now.
Thanks, Craig. I think the charity sector has always been in my blood. So even from the youngest child, I remember visiting orphanages in South Africa and doing whatever needed to be done. So whether that was fundraising or playing with kids or whatever. So from a very early age, we were introduced to the space of being kind, I guess, yes, from our parents. So that's sort of been ingrained. And from a business perspective, I studied business at uni and then went on to work in the financial sector within South Africa and then the UK, and then back to South Africa. And when we went back to South Africa in 2007, I started a company called the Desk Concierge, which was a lifestyle management company. So probably the other extreme in terms of the kind of person one is dealing with in that space, but it allowed me to marry up a lot of people in terms of philanthropy, doing good, being kind, as well as enjoying the good things in life from a client perspective and from our perspective. So the Desk Concierge was amazing, loved every minute of it, made the best of friends, and enjoyed the humans that I worked with, and had just wonderful teams as well. And I also owned a spa in South Africa, which was situated on a golf estate, and again, the other end of humanity in terms of privilege, etc. So along with that, I had always held a space in the charity sector, and at the same time as running those businesses, would be involved. We have a soup kitchen that we look after in South Africa, and then a lot of educational opportunities, creating them for other people. So private scholarships, as well as funding less privileged schools, or finding funders for less privileged schools, in terms of covering costs of transport, covering costs of food, covering costs of additional teachers, to make sure that the schools become more of a centre of excellence, especially when they are positioned across the road from a private school. Yes. So, it's and marrying up also relationships between those two schools as well, for example. So the work wasn't in an individual capacity, it was certainly group focused. So my background is it's always been in both extremes, I guess. In the NGO sector, not by not from an actual work perspective, but by design and by passion, and then in the entrepreneurship space, where it's what drives me and what I love doing. So that's what about me.
And that's a really powerful mix, isn't it? Because both worlds need each other very, very much, and both skill sets. are required these days to merge, and to require that balance is vital, especially now, I think more than ever. You've mentioned some of your childhood, and you've also mentioned, all the different elements that you become successful in your life, including the concierge organization and the spa and Africa Cocoon, and your charitable pursuits, and guiding people in that way, and CEO in the UK, and the teams that you've worked with. There's so much. Where did this vision come from? Or did you have a vision when you were a kid about helping people, or making money, or what started all of this for you? Was it your parents? I know that they taught you kindness, but was there a moment in your life, because there has been, for me, there's been a few moments where you suddenly thought, this is what my life's about, or this is what I'm going to create? Or did it just happen symbiotically?
I think it was a mixture of both. I think there was a powerful point when, I don't even know how old I was, maybe 8 or thereabouts, when we were visiting one of the orphanages. There was a little girl called Giselle, and she was the tiniest of humans, and she crept right into my heart. And I just thought, well, how is it that I lead the lifestyle I do, and I'm so lucky? And what makes it different for her? Obviously, there was the fact that she didn't have the parental support, etc., that I did, and that's a rough start in life to begin with. But I always had a very strong sense of justice, and I still do, and empathy. And I think the justice part for me is a big trigger to doing a lot of things. I found it really difficult to understand, and this is coming from a place of white privilege, the difficulty that other people face because of the color of their skin. I find it's just, the injustice of it is staggering, to say the least. And that drives me every day. It drives me definitely to be a better human, and to try and put whatever little plans in place that I can do and make, and whatever difference I can create, to stop that being what the world looks at and thinks, okay, you deserve an opportunity and you don't. It makes me feel sick to the stomach, quite frankly.
Yes.
And I guess that's been my constant driver throughout my life. And being only 27, I still was in apartheid era, and I didn't understand apartheid when I was in the throes of it as a small human. I had no idea what was going on and what it meant, because that was the norm, I guess. And now, I mean, my parents were very liberal and proactive, and they made the differences that they could make. But the injustice of it is I guess really what drives me every day.
And when you look at your sense of skill, what are the 3 things that have made you most successful?
Empathy, dedication. I think in terms of not dedication to a cause, but dedication to the drive within me to do things. I think the drive is a necessary internal aspect to have, to be able to make sure that you are headed in a direction you're happy with. And I think the last thing is relationship building, and not being able to, or not being afraid to ask people to do things and step up and make a difference, whether a lot of people don't realize what difference they can make. And I have absolutely no shame in asking somebody to do whatever, whether that be please fund something, or please step up, or please turn up, or please do. There's nothing in my body that is reluctant to ask.
What do you think creates that sense of confidence, and that, you called it, I think, lack of shame, the empathetic piece, absolutely, and the ability for you to be able to have that drive, and also the willingness to be able to ask somebody. Those 3 elements mixed together obviously are very powerful. Talk to me about what creates that ability for all those 3 things. When things get difficult, which they do for all of us, Carole, when things get difficult for you, is it something that you say to yourself in the morning, Or is it something that you say to yourself just before a meeting where you say, Carole, you're going to do this, or this is going to happen, or they're going to do this, or I'm going to help this child? Is it something psychologically that you remind yourself of, or you just have those gifts and you are who you are? What helps you with that drive? What's the petrol that goes in that drive tank?
I think it is being lucky enough to be able to see how to connect the dots strategically a lot of the time. So I look at somebody and I know what needs to be done, and I know what part they can play in it. And for some reason, I've been so lucky that people have stepped up when asked. I think people want to be directed and want to be asked and want to be included, but sometimes don't know how. And whether it's a work, as in whether it's in the corporate or entrepreneurial space, or whether it's in the NGO space, I think if you can connect the dots and try and place people in positions of where they can make a difference, that's relevant to them. It's amazing what comes of it. So it's not a thought process. It feels like an innate kind of understanding of what works and what doesn't. And even if somebody says no, I don't give up. I mean, some people look at me and make her stop. And I don't even mean financially, but I mean I do put the onus on people to deliver, and whatever space that's in. I am not a micromanager. I have no interest in standing over somebody's shoulder to make sure they've done something or not. It's up to them to do what feels right. And again, whether that's in the corporate space or in the NGO space. And I think that has given people power to make a difference themselves and take whatever credit they want to take. It doesn't matter, as long as the work's getting done.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not relevant.
No, that's real leadership, because, to have that balance between empowering people, the gift of a strategy to be able for you to see that in them and encourage them to do that. That's great. To me, that gives them a real opportunity. So as you talk through it, I was wondering, because, I always like to go deeper and deeper and deeper if I can, to really understand how we can model you. So when fear comes up, which it does for all of us, what do you say to yourself, or what do you do to say, I'm not listening to that?
I try to remove myself just for a bit and create some space around it just to regroup, because I mean, fear is an awful driver of doing the wrong thing or nothing. And so I think for me, it's realizing that I'm not operating in the right space, and to take a minute, whether that means go for a walk, or whether it means to talk to some friends who know and understand me, or whether it means hibernating for a few days away from work. I think that helps a lot. I think most people are empathetic, and I think when you are very empathetic, you feel a lot of it really deep within, and it hurts. So you do need to remove yourself from all those spaces. And I mean, there's a lot going on at the moment where you're completely overwhelmed, and you think, where do I start to make the difference? What do I want to help here and here and here? But actually it sometimes detracts from what you're doing at the time. So I think I need to walk, generally a long walk, to either listen to the sounds around me or music or whatever. But if I take myself off, I'm better when I come back.
In psychology, what I've studied is there's something obviously called a primary question, which is often the most important questions that we ask ourselves, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. Is there a mantra or something that you do every day? Or is there a certain question or a certain thought or focus that you give yourself when you're working, and sometimes in the volatility that you do? Is there something that you tell yourself that you hold on to, or physically that you do that empowers you, or that you remember?
I remind myself all the time that whatever my experiences are always from a place of privilege. So I need to have a look at them from other angles, always.
Okay.
And the sense of injustice, I have to sometimes monitor and understand whether that's whether what's driving me is real or whether it's just something I'm feeling, and what angle to take on it. So it's not necessarily a mantra, but those, I think the sense of injustice and the sense of privilege are two things that I try and monitor and see what's real, what's just about me, and where I need to improve my outlook to be better at doing what I know I want to always do.
You talked about the insanity of injustice. I wanted to ask you about the biggest problem or the biggest problems that we face in the world right now. And I don't want to presume that you feel that the biggest problem that we face right now on the planet is injustice. I want to ask you the question. So what do you think is our biggest problem right now? And how do we either solve it, or do you feel that we need to manage it better?
I definitely don't think we can only manage it better. I think we have to do some radical restructuring and rethinking and replaying of what the world looks like. I think injustice is a good headline topic for what I feel. But I think from there, everything else, you can start talking about it all. For me, yes. I focus on education and what I can do in that space, because I feel that the more we can educate, we can create or try and address the cycle of poverty that's never ending for some families. And I think that's a good starting point. It's one area I can focus on in terms of I understand it a little bit. I think injustice covers so many different topics and areas that we could address. I absolutely believe in the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that is something that needs to be taken on board, addressed, looked at from, again, a position of privilege, and understand what we're doing now in terms of the NGO space, how we can better do what we're doing, and how we can do it in a more inclusive way if we're not doing it to the best of our abilities. So I think it's something we need to keep on looking at. And I think injustice looks at all of that. It looks at the gender-based violence, it looks at education, it looks at every single aspect of what it takes to be a successful, however you want to interpret that,
yes,
human. So yeah, injustice, I guess, for me is the highlight or the headline topic.
And one of the ways in which you make a difference is through teams. And so many people watching this interview and listening to this podcast are running teams or very involved in teams. And so perhaps they're a CEO who has just taken on a team right now with coronavirus, where the culture isn't what it used to be or isn't what they want it to be. And so give us some advice and thoughts as to, in your experience, of which you have great experience with this, what creates a winning culture? What does a leader need to do in a team in order to eradicate injustice, in order to make a difference in the middle of a township in South Africa or in India or wherever we are in the world? What do you need to do inside your team to create a great culture?
I think it starts with the old adage of lead by example. I don't think you can do better than that in terms of creating an environment that you are happy with, and then referring to your teams to make sure that is something that they're enjoying or how they would like to change things up. Interestingly, over COVID, I would say that from an Africa to Kun perspective, it's brought all of us so much closer together on a global basis. It's encouraged us to have more consistent Zoom meetings. So yes, we are seeing one another more now than we've ever seen one another in the past from a global perspective. And what that translates into is incredible teamwork. Honestly, I've never experienced anything like it. And as much as COVID is a disaster and a nightmare for people in the throes of it or in the township space, etc., because obviously lockdown and COVID and township spaces is completely different from what we're experiencing. And so I think from a team perspective, for me, it's always been about letting people do what they need to do to be successful. However I can guide them, I will do, but I will never ever give them a blow by blow, step by step process in terms of this is what you need to do to be successful, because it doesn't translate, in my opinion. What I do is very different from, but if I lead by example and somebody takes certain aspects from that and includes it into their daily methods, or in terms of making their life head in a direction they're happy with, then that for me is successful teamwork.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the other people that are around you, different leaders of which you know many, who do you know, I'm a great believer in who we spend our time with. It really shapes us and helps us to become who we are. Who are the 1, 2, 3, 4 people that have been most inspired you on the planet so far in your life? And in particular, what have they taught you? I know that's a big question.
It's a really big question. I'm going to start in a smaller circle, in that I think my immediate brother, sister, mother situation has always been inspiring. I think the hurdles that they've managed to get through have been inspiring. And I guess as a child, sometimes you don't realize what your parents are going through, because they make things seem like an adventure. And it's only when you get to this age that you think, oh my God, was my mother really
don't go through that? Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know, it was never a difficult thing for me, because my mom made it into something that was, wow, just another adventure for us, and let's see what happens there. So that's a start. My brother and sister have always been the most positive, inspiring humans you could ever meet. They are also very driven by injustice, by making a difference. My sister sits on every board she can find, and every council she can find, and every leadership thing she can find, just to make a difference in the world that she's in. And it's inspiring, always has been. And you know, she is a softie, but just comes across and fights the battle for anybody that needs the battle fought for them. So that's always been inspiring. And my brother is probably the most positive human that you will ever encounter, and in any bit of adversity, and he's almost completely blind and has traveled the world and done more than you or I combined at any point, and come out being the most inspiring, motivational human you could imagine. So close to home, those are inspiring. And I have a husband and 2 daughters who inspire me every day, and the kindness that comes out of my daughters makes me happy every day. And the relationship that my husband has with my daughters and myself is incredible. So I think we're really lucky from that perspective, and I'm incredibly lucky to be inspired by people close to me.
Yes.
And then I've had, I guess, people that I've worked with along the way who have shaped me into the person I am, in terms of the various different spaces, and given me the confidence to get rid of mostly imposter syndrome, which I think we all deal with every day. And I am grateful to people that have helped me achieve what I've achieved so far by believing in me. And you know, I think I did say to you that I don't like talking about myself, because the imposter syndrome still applies. And I think, you know, sometimes you sit and you think, well, I haven't really done very much of anything, so I got lucky, you know. But actually, I think we do tend to do quite a lot of work, and the harder you work, the luckier you get, I guess. Yes,
absolutely. So there's a lot there that you've shared around, you know, your mum, your parents, your brother, your sister, your husband, and your 2 children. And the theme that runs through it, for me, and I just wanted to check that I'm right in this from what you've shared, is that it's obviously a sense of kindness that you've got from them. It's also an ability to be able to fight for injustice. It's also an ability, no matter what impairs us, such as sight in your brother, and you know that you've learned that everything is possible. Talk to me a little bit more about, there must be lots more, I'm sure there is. How would you summarize that in what are the biggest learnings from all of these guys, from a values perspective or a delivery perspective? What do you think they've given you that has empowered you the most, these people?
I mean, it's a tricky one because everybody gives something else, you know,
Yeah.
or adds more to. But I think
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's seeing other people just keep on going in
Yes.
whatever face of adversity or space or you know, the energy levels that are given to something that drives them. And the fact that, I guess, maybe that they include me in some of those conversations gives me the confidence to believe that actually I am worthy of somebody asking me questions, you know, and engaging with. I think the fact that that Gary Lubner also, you know, offered me the opportunity to be part of Africa Tikkun in the UK and has given me the leeway and space to do what he thinks I'm capable of doing is massive for me. I mean, he's just been amazing in, you know, supportive of things that we've come up with.
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I feel grateful to work alongside him.
You've summarized it really well, Carole, because it's, you know, we get so much from other people, and being able to share and step up and show who we are through this. When you look at the moments that you've had, of which there's obviously been thousands of experiences, I've asked you about the people that have inspired you. Are there 2 or 3 moments that you visited or experiences that you've had, bad and good, that you think have taught you the most? Because when I hear people's stories, that teaches me so much. It's like when I think about this interview and your background, and you know, I can visualize you as an 8-year-old and where it all started, and these stories for me are very, very powerful. So just paint a picture for me of 2 or 3 moments, if you can, in your life when you've experienced something really rubbish or really amazing, or really heartfelt, that has brought you to where you are today. Are there 2 or 3 key moments?
So I think the first one, the earliest one I have is with at the orphanage, where that was a definite key moment for me. I think the soup kitchen that we have always been part of in the Franschhoek area is definitely a key moment. I mean, I think for me it's heartbreaking every day to see what needs to be done in the environment, and I don't understand why people have to live in a township, and I don't understand why there's the need for soup kitchens, and you know, it's just outrageous, and that drives me because it's just, I know we have to do it, and we do what we need to do, but actually what my driver for everything is, in terms of all my experiences, is I hope one day we never have to exist. You know, that would be just phenomenal if no charity or NGO had to exist because there was that quality. That would be my driver. The defining moments are, Africa Tikkun is unbelievable, and for me has been the biggest learner and driver, because when you go to the centres and you meet the general managers and the people who work within the centres, and you see the difference they make every day to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people, whether it's directly or indirectly through the family of the youngsters that come to the centres. It's exceptional. And I think if the general managers and the people at the centres are driven to do that work every day, the least I can do is do anything on my side to make that better every day, and to look at areas where we can assist in the UK and Europe to improve the quality of the centres, which is one of our values, is to have exceptional centres and quality centres. So we are offering things that are quality and mean that it's meaningful change and education. It's not just filling a gap because we have to fill a gap. It's quality. And the people, I mean, honestly, the general managers at Africa Tikkun are exceptional humans, and they lead by the best design and way they can. They are amazing.
Do you see that coming up with the generation of people like your children and my children? Do you see huge progress? And do you see a world right now where these guys, these kids that we brought into the world can do it so much better than we have? Do you see that?
They do it so much better than we can. We've managed to create a lot of disaster that they're going to have to fix as well, as we have done for previous generations.
Yes.
So I guess unfortunately it's an ongoing cycle where we haven't quite got to the point where the next generation is going to have it easy. I don't think our children's generation are going to have it easy by any stretch. I think they've got a load of work, whether that's environmental, educationally, or humanitarian wise. They've got so many things to fix. But having said that, I think they're better placed to fix it than we are, and to make sure that it's left in a better way for the next ongoing generations. I hope we've done our bit to educate our own children, and I don't mean everybody's children, I mean my own children, and I can impact immediately on what justice looks like, what privilege looks like, what life looks like, and what it should look like. So I can only hope.
You're incredibly busy, and then you have your family life, and then you have your health, and then, like all of us, well, not like all of us, because you're busier than most. So how do you, and I think this is powerful for everybody to understand, how do you balance your life between what's going on in South Africa and businesses and the charity, and in South Africa the charity here, Africa Tikkun, different things going on in your life personally, with the different partnerships that you have, and you've got to have a life outside of that. Is it a conscious balance in from hours and time management, or is it just like everything works out? What's your focus there?
It's the latter. I am definitely not one to speak to anybody about a work-life balance.
Okay.
I absolutely do make sure that whoever I'm working with understands that what my timelines are not relevant to them. If I'm working at 2 a.m, that is not a call for them to do the same. And I 100% believe in a work-life balance, but I absolutely love what I do, so I don't feel like it's work.
No. Okay.
For me, I do spend far too many hours doing what I do, but then I don't feel bad when I take time to go and spend time with my family, and and I'm present when I do that. I try and be. I try not to be on my phone or stare at emails or do whatever. So I do try consciously be present, and I will go to every sporting event and everything that the girls have got going on. Yes. I absolutely adore watching them, and I love it. So I do, and I think because I'm not a time watcher, and neither is anybody that I really work with, when I do take a couple of weeks off, or the staff take, whoever I'm working with takes time off, there's nobody that is going, oh, she should have been, or she should have, again, I'm not interested in whether you've achieved everything you've set out to achieve. Take the rest of the day, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And again, I think COVID has been really good for that, because people have proven that they do not need to sit in an office and be watched, which I've never been a believer in anyway. I've never in seeing people sitting at a desk for the sake of it.
My final question to you today, which is, this is a huge question, an impossible one to answer, but I'm sure you're going to answer it well, is if there was one piece of advice that you have for us lot running around this planet right now, if there's one thing that you think is most important that we keep in heart and in mind, what do you think is the most important thing that we think and feel about right now?
Yeah, I'll just solve the world problems while we're here, shall I?
Yeah, just the next 2 minutes would be good.
Okay, no problem. For me, I think it's a real asking yourself the question every day, what can I do to make a difference today? And whether it be a small thing in your own home or whether it be something bigger for, the greater good, just to focus on trying to set that goal and get to that point, and question yourself all the time. Ask yourself, are you coming from a place of privilege? Ask yourself, are you in touch with the reality of the situation, or are you doing it from your own introspective self-worth, or looking at it, in a fair way?
Carole, thank you so much. Thank you
you
so much for being here. It was really great talking to you.
Oh, thanks, Craig. It's lovely to talk to you, and I think the work you're doing is unbelievable. So please
Bless you. I will. Thank you so much.
Your support.
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you.